evening. Good evening. Yes. ¿Quieres decirme algo? Okay, thank you very much, especially because it's late at night and it's our last event at COP28 for PLACA and for everyone. Welcome, Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests, good afternoon. And thank you for joining us at the Food and Agriculture Pavilion, and to all that are joining us here online as well. My name is Maria Mercedes Proaño. I'm the Climate Finance Officer at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations in Latin America and the Caribbean. And I will have the honor to moderate our event today titled PLACA's Dynamic Role as a Mechanism for Voluntary Regional Agriculture and Climate Collaboration in Latin America and the Caribbean, whose aim is to share the results of this platform, the platform of Latin America and the Caribbean for Climate Action in Agriculture, in supporting ministries of agriculture in enhancing climate action towards the implementation of their commitments under the Paris Agreement. For that, we have an exceptional panel in the room, and I appreciate being here this late in the day, this late in the COP. Thank you so very much. We have Mr. Cesar Saboto, Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, Fisheries, Rural Transformation, Industry and Labor of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Mrs. Sol Ortiz, General Director of Policy, Perspective and Climate Change of the Government of Mexico, representing the PLACA Presidency. Ms. Ana Maria Lobo Guerrero, Director of the Climate Action Research Area of the Biodiversity SEAD Alliance and Senior Director of Climate Action at the CGIAR. Mr. Juan Carlos Mendoza, Director of Environment and Climate Change of the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD. And our own Mr. Kaveh Zahedi, Director of the Office of Climate Change, Biodiversity and Environment at FAO. We're happy to have you here, and we would like to start a conversation, and for that we would like to ask Mr. Zahedi to provide some opening remarks by sharing part of the main actions and results of PLACA, and I would like to give you the floor so you can start telling us what it's like for FAO to be at the Secretariat of PLACA. I believe you have the microphone. You have the microphone over there. Thank you. Mic, please.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. As you say, late in the day.
Pictures, please.
Thank you. There we go. Some friends on screen as well. It is late in the day, so please consider all protocols observed, and it is a pleasure to welcome you to this very last event of COP28, highlighting really our commitment as FAO to a more efficient, inclusive, resilient, sustainable agri-food system. Basically what we've been advocating for the whole of this COP, and something that hopefully we will find has resonated with all, including those who are going to stay overnight and discuss the final global stocktake document. So it's a final event for us here, but feel pity for those who are going to still be on the other side of this campus discussing overnight. We do want to share the results of PLACA, the Platform of Latin American Caribbean for Climate Action on Agriculture. It's all about fostering collaboration, a network of shared knowledge, capacity development in support of ministries of agriculture, all to help them in a way enhance their climate action, implement their commitments under the Paris Agreement. We're doing so from a sort of a strong basis now because within FAO as well, there's been a sort of movement of change. The members themselves have adopted a climate strategy, which I think is a great move ahead, bringing climate change discussions to the heart of the Food and Agriculture Organization, and indeed to the heart of the work we do. And it's got its various pillars, and of course, global, regional, and community, and PLACA fits perfectly within that strategy. Now, for us, PLACA, it's a platform, but really it's about collaboration. That's essentially what is at the heart of it. It's about collaboration, it's about partnership to promote climate action in agriculture at the regional level, and that's what PLACA does. It supports collective action, cooperation amongst the countries, inclusion of the diverse groups to address climate change challenges. So it's in a way a mechanism that is advocating and helping bring the information, the knowledge, and share it so that we do begin to move towards producing more with less, begin to position agriculture and food systems as what they are, solution providers also for climate change, resilience, adaptation, and of course mitigation. We've tried to play a leading role in PLACA since its launch at COP25, and to coordinate to some degree the platform that now brings together 16 countries that meet periodically and help to identify, what are their priorities, mitigation, adaptation strategies, anything that basically is needed in the climate action through the agri-food system. We think it's a unique mechanism. We think it's a great mechanism. Actually, we think it's a mechanism that we'd like to replicate in other regions as well, because it really works. And it really is a wonderful way of bringing everyone together, including to share quickly what we're learning through the NDC process, to raise our ambitions collectively through that process as well, and then reconnect back into the COPs and the climate process. I think with our support, PLACA has managed to promote this sort of balanced approach between agricultural production and environment. We all know that, we need to feed mouths. I think our colleague Manuel was telling us that we have to have one figure in our minds for every panel and say that every day we add 165,000 mouths to feed. And this is a projection that continues, of course, as the global population increases towards maybe the 10 billion by the middle of the century. So we do have that underlying demand coming at us, as it were, but we have planetary boundaries, especially on climate, and we're feeling the impact of not having observed sort of the sane path towards climate action already, and it's impacting especially our agriculture, our farmers, our farming communities. So that's really what PLACA is about. It's got thematic working groups. At this late stage in the game, I think I won't go into the details of the thematic working groups, but it's got a good structure, it's got a good governance, it's nicely owned by the members, by the 16 countries, and it's supported by us to really bring innovation, to bring the low-cost solutions, to change the narrative to some degree, from agriculture being always the cause of lots of emissions, which, yes, there are emissions, to one which has a lot of solutions, and to embed that in the policy-making process. So all of that is to say thank you. Thank you for coming, for joining us late in the day. Thank you to the colleagues who also joined to learn a bit more about it. This is not the end of the conversation. For people like me, I have to say, it really is learning for replication purposes, because this is a high demand kind of a partnership that we want to take to the other regions as well. So with that said, and knowing that, of course, Latin America and the Caribbean is in some respects at the forefront of the impacts of climate change and the forefront of action, this is a perfect place for us to end our COP journey. So again, on behalf of FAO, I'd like to thank all the key partners in this event, PLACA presidency, represented by Mexico, of course, our partners CGIAR and IFAD. This is our pavilion, this is our space, and it's perfect to be ending our COP journey together in this event as well. Of course, our collaboration doesn't end here. We are working hand in hand in the region as well, and we really appreciate that, and we look forward to continuing it. So with that said, thank you very much, and back to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Director, for sharing what it means for FAO to work with PLACA, Secretariat of PLACA. After 4 years of hard work and regional coordination, we're seeing concrete results. And in order to talk about a little bit about that, I would like to invite Mrs. Sol Ortiz, actually the president of PLACA at the moment for this year. And Sol, we would like to ask from you, what concrete strategies can be implemented to encourage the engagement of countries in Latin America and the Caribbean in the implementation of PLACA's agenda, addressing both emissions reductions and adaptation challenges?
Thank you for being here. And I also want to thank FAO. Let me first start with this, because I'm very happy that you have been accompanying us in this journey. I think that has been making the big difference, and we are very happy with that. Also, thank you to our partners that are accompanies us today. We have been putting together several strategies. The first one, it's directly with the focal points. We have these 16 countries. We are very happy to have them all. And we are encouraging our focal points to share what we are doing. And the other key part of PLACA, as was just mentioned, are the thematic groups. These thematic groups have very engaged and very committed coordinators, and the members of these thematic groups are making very nice work. And what we need is to communicate a bit more that. We want to make sure that other countries know what PLACA is doing, because PLACA's results are public goods, and are public goods for the whole region. So it's very important that the whole region knows what we're doing. And something else that I think is very important about PLACA is that is something that was created for the ministers of agriculture, the ministries of agriculture, to get the needs and put together solutions. How? Communicating and exchanging experiences. So one important part is, now that we are showing results, not what we have all these things that can be shared, other countries can say, hey, I want to be part of that. And that is something that we have been engaged in too. I think that another very important thing that we need to do is to have a lot more coordination among other organizations. We don't want to duplicate things. We want to make sure that we are complementing work, and that is something that we are also trying to accomplish. And this, when I say other organizations, I'm talking about, for example, LAC, which is the Alliance for Soils of Latin America and the Caribbean, and ICA. We have also many things in common with ICA. So it is very important that we all know what is the niche of each of these organizations in the region, and we create synergies. That is a very good way to call the attention for other countries and to be part of PLACA. I have to say a big challenge that we have is in relation to language, because part of Latin America and the Caribbean, which is very important that we are all together, have this issue of language. Sometimes we have to have a video conference with translation, and that is great, but sometimes when we don't have translation, it's very challenging. And now what we are doing, when we don't have the translation, we get some video conference webinars in English and others in Spanish, and that is the way that we are trying to engage more countries to be part of this. And I think that it's curious, but every country that is part of it is helping and disseminating what we're doing, and that is very encouraging as well. So another thing that I want to mention is that this has been a very nice journey, and curiously there has been 4 presidencies of PLACA this far. Angelina here from Chile was the first one, and then the other previous to me were also women. Yeah. So that is something that I think is important to highlight, because it's not common that we can feel empowered for what we are doing, and I think that that is something that has been not easy, I have to say, in our countries. Sorry, I have to say it, but that is also something that is very encouraging for many of the women in our countries, and not just people working in the ministries, but also farmers, women farmers that are the ones that in many of our countries are the ones selecting the crops, are the ones cooking the food, so as was said. So that is another thing that we want to highlight. It's not that the next president cannot be a man, it's fine. I have to say that as well, but I wanted to highlight that part. So those are some of the challenges we are doing, but some of the challenges we are trying to face and how we are doing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Mexico, our presidency, PLACA presidency, in collaboration with Argentina co-presidency, for this heartfelt testimony. Yes, Chile, Uruguay, Costa Rica, they were all women that show something, and we are very proud of what we're doing. CGIAR, CH and CGIAR have been partner organizations. PLACA is not only the countries, but also has partner organizations. During the past years, we have been working together, exchanging information, organizing technical workshops in support of PLACA member countries. This is why I would like to invite Ana Maria Lobo Guerrero, Director of the Climate Action Research Area of Biodiversity CIAT, to talk a little bit about that. So Ana Maria, and she has a slide presentation. Ana Maria, how can the collaboration between CGIAR and PLACA strengthen the adoption of digitally enabled agroclimatic services in the region and enhance the resilience of farmers and producers to cope with climate change? Please.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a total pleasure to be here. Even though a last event of the day, it's still have energy, because I think that this is something where we have been working a lot, and we feel very proud, and we feel very optimistic about the opportunity of the collaboration. You could go, okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit back in terms of addressing your question for the collaboration, but I'm going to get there. Thank you. So this is a little bit what we have been doing in relation to these digitally enabled agroclimatic services. And it's a really interesting story of collaboration. All these ideas started back in 2013 when at that point there was a CGIAR research program on climate change, agriculture, and food security called CCAFS. And we had a very successful project in Senegal, in Kaffrine. And it was basically about collaboration in relation to climate information, and how through collaboration of different stakeholders in Senegal, all the way from the local government to the national, including the farmers, we were somehow transforming and translated climate information so that it could be useful for decision-making processes. And what we did was we brought people from Colombia and from Honduras to see what was happening in Senegal. And they were so excited to see that really this climate information was making a difference in terms of reducing the impacts of climate variability and extremes. They got so enthusiastic that they came back to their countries, both Colombia and Honduras, and they said, you know, we want to work with the CGIAR, at that point with CIAT, to make this happen. And this is where it started. And it started in Colombia, and then it went to Honduras, and you are going to see, I have another slide where I present what has been happening. But I just want to tell you a little bit of this work, because it has been really successful in terms of Latin America. And even though we have similar projects in Africa and in Asia, in Latin America is the place that we have been seeing the scaling of this idea of these participatory processes for producing and using information. And just wanted to highlight that we have been using these like 4 dimensions of the climate information services, all the way from the production to the translation, transfer, and use. And for us, and the whole idea, the way that we started thinking about this is, yes, climate information is important, yes, the models are important, but there's nothing if just producing the information. We need to really understand through the research that we do how we can contribute to make sure that that information is translated into something that farmers can use for decision making. So that's the whole circle that you see in here, which is not just the production of the information, but going all the way into the use. And we have been working a lot in terms of the capacity building. So one of our goals has been to work together with the meteorological services in each one of the countries that we operate, and make sure that they have the capacity, that we work together on enhancing the capacity for producing this climate information. So that's one of our key activities that what we have been doing in relation to the topic to improve the climate forecast capacity in the meteorological services of the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean as well. And then thinking about a little bit of the translation. So, and this is where I think that it's very innovative, even though it's a very simple idea, it's very innovative. What we said was, you know, we need to get closer the climate information to the farmers that are going to use it. We need to not just tell the farmers, you know, precipitation, it's going to be above or below normal, because farmers cannot do things with this type of information. So we really need to translate this information so that it's useful, and that implies combining the climate information with the agronomic information. And therefore, from that combination came the agroclimatic forecasts. And that's very, very interesting in terms of translating just a probability of rainfall above normal or below into something that can be digested by farmers. So this is where this idea of the local technical agroclimatic committees became a reality, which was basically a space that we have on a monthly basis where a lot of stakeholders were invited. So we have the climate modelers, we had the agronomists running the crop models, but we had the farmers, which was very interesting, because usually they are not part of these conversations, and usually they see the climate information very far away from them, and therefore it's hard for them to use them. So they were going into these discussions, taking part of the discussions, and by that way we get them closer to the information, so they felt comfortable talking about the climate information, talking about the climate models, and then talking about how to combine them with the crop modeling. So it was a really interesting thing happening, but just opening a space of conversation and collaboration. And then all these generation of agroclimatic forecasts became something tangible through these bulletins, the agroclimatic bulletins, where they have specific actions in relation to how to operationalize these agroclimatic forecasts. And we started doing research in relation to how to communicate these agroclimatic action, or these bulletins that had the action. So through different ways, digital innovations, and we start thinking about that, always thinking about the users and tailoring these digital tools to the users, because it's not the same to work with an indigenous community, to work with other type of smallholder farmers, so always tailoring to what was needed. And then in terms of the use, we also included this approach on participatory integrated climate services for agriculture that we have been testing in different regions of the world. And then we put that into the context of Latin America and started seeing how this information that was coming from these committees, agroclimatic committees, that was translated through the bulletins, how we could inform decisions by this participatory process through this PIXA methodology. So it was the whole circle of, going all the way from the production to the translation to the transfer to the use. And as a result of that, then we saw something really interesting. So one experience that started in Colombia, now we have 11 countries in Latin America that are using this approach, the whole circle of the approach. We have, according to studies that we have delivered, we have around 500,000 Latin American farmers that have benefiting from this approach of climate information services all the way from the production to the use. But of course, and this is what I want to emphasize in terms of the work with PLACA, the partnership, the collaboration has been the fundamental concept that make this scaling possible. So more than 400 institutions that are participating in this, many of them are governments, either national, local, producers association, and I think that this is what it's needed in terms of making these kind of efforts sustainable. And this connects to my last message, which is addressing your question. So with PLACA, we believe that we have a huge opportunity of continuing promoting these kind of innovations for the use of climate information all the way from Argentina to Mexico. And I think that you have been putting together a really interesting platform in which this digital innovation makes sense, and how through understanding the lessons learned from implementation in different countries, we can make these kind of efforts even stronger and more impactful. So we are ready to continue working with PLACA. We feel very comfortable working with PLACA. We have a lot of innovations beyond the one that I just mentioned that we are ready to work with you to see how we can inform policies based on the knowledge that we have been generating. And just to end, to highlight the role of Daisy, because she has been really the one. I'm just like the voice in here, but she is the one that has been making these numbers possible, and she has been the one interacting with Angelina and with the rest of the members of PLACA, doing a wonderful job in terms of making this a reality. So thank you, Daisy, for that, and we are eager to continue working with PLACA towards improving the livelihoods of smallholder farmers in Latin America and the Caribbean. Thanks.
Thank you, Ana Maria, for sharing this. In fact, PLACA members, I would like to ask the members of the panel to come back. Do not run away. I know it's late, but don't run away. If we could have the main slide back, please, that would be appreciated. In fact, recently, PLACA took a stock take, remember, with all the jump boards and the PLACA members, and decided what they would like to emphasize for the coming work plans. And agroclimatic services, you might remember, was one of them. So you have your work cut out for it, and we have our own team in FAO that could liaise with this collaboration with PLACA. But all of this is only possible if we close the gap on financing. And this is why I would like to ask Juan Carlos from IFAD. How do you see the role of IFAD? IFAD plays a pivotal role in providing credit to small-scale farmers. Can you share some successful experience in Latin America and the Caribbean that you see could also be scaled up and implemented through PLACA, who has also a pillar on resource mobilization that has significantly contributed to sustainable development of agricultural?
Thank you. Let me, first, thank you very much for the invitation, and maybe I take this from two perspectives, and I'm sorry that I don't have a compelling presentation, so you'll have to put up with me. One is generally how to bring the available pools of climate finance into smallholder agriculture, which is what IFAD works on. We work with people, farmers that have less than 2 to 5, or up to 2 to 5 hectares of land. So we are really talking about fairly small ones. When we engage for example, the Green Climate Fund on this. They are very interested in reaching precisely that type of farmers who are at the front line of climate change adaptation, and the concern is how to develop projects that are not, in a sense, that run the risk of elite capture. Yeah. So what we have done is we look at 3 or 4 steps, and I'll describe it generically, and then I'll provide you with some examples, which is prepare, standardize, aggregate, and measure. Prepare means prepare the small landholder farmers to be able to absorb the resources. And actually, this is a non-trivial issue. How to, for example, have a business plan that is multi-year, what is the type of risk management that they could have. Then we standardize. What do we mean by standardization, which is not, you can have a standardization which is context specific. It's not a contradiction in terms. By standardization is we need to look at what are the type of financial products that are relatively replicable and that can reach what the financiers would call small ticket sizes. This is many times linked with existing national programs, such as, for example, credit guarantee programs, and I'll discuss some of them in a moment, that are normally thought out for somewhat bigger type of farmers. So how, to the degree that you can standardize the products, then you can make it a viable proposition also for the financial institutions, private or government-owned, that are trying to reach these smaller farmers. Then you need to aggregate. What do we mean by aggregate? Particularly for us who work with farmers in what we call the last mile, pretty far away from urban centers, not necessarily physically close to financial institution, it is always easier to aggregate them being through farmers associations. I mean, it used to be mostly through cooperatives, but there's many formas de asociatividad. There's many ways to aggregate them in a way that makes it also the transaction costs to manage these credits and implement these business plans. It lowers the transaction cost both for the farmers themselves and also for the financial institutions that may be serving them. And then the last component is result measurement. I think this is something that it's, particularly if you're dealing with any type of concessional funder or if it's a government program, you need to make sure not only that you know, it used to be that, okay, are farmers paying back? Well, if they're paying back, then the program is a success. But there's issues of additionality. Is their livelihoods really improving or not? And that's the fourth component. Okay, but this is sort of the generic framework. I'm just going to give you a few examples. Maybe the first one, because it's good from the perspective of sustainability, because the question always is, okay, once you remove some external source of concessional funding, will this last through time? So in Uruguay, there was a rural microcredit program that was established actually in 2004 as a component of the IFAD-funded Uruguay Rural Project. And this has been progressively being expanded through the Rural Inclusion Project. And it has been, in a sense, it has been taken by the Ministry of Agriculture in connection with local financial institutions. And this is a very successful program that continues working with very small farmers. And I always use this as an example because actually, you know, given the income level of Uruguay, IFAD hasn't worked in Uruguay for the last 5 years. And it is a program that continues going on, that is self-sufficient. And again, for this, it is very key to make the transaction cost both to the financial provider and to the farmer, relatively low. Otherwise, you always depend on some sort of concessional financing. Another example is the role, and this is still an ongoing project in Honduras. This is the PLACA project. It's called PLACA because it's in a Lenca region, indigenous people, where we have established women-led cajas rurales. Now, this is the cajas by themselves, the savings and loans, are non-regulated because we're talking about groups of 10 to 20 women. They're quite small, but we link them with the regulated financial sector so that as they grow their savings, eventually then they are able to get credit from the regulated sector. Again, this is just like PLACA, I must say, because this is women-led. This has been extremely successful. This is a program actually that we are scaling up in the rest of Honduras. And then the last example, because I mentioned earlier the role of guarantee funds. Guarantee funds or partial credit guarantee funds are critical to, I would use the word entice, the financial sector to work in areas where normally they would not work. So we actually have the privilege of working right now with the government of Mexico in a proposal that will be funded both by IFAD as well as by the Green Climate Fund. This is the BALSAS project, where we are actually working quite actively with FONAFOR and FOSEFOR, which are Mexican government guarantee funds in the forestry sector, precisely to help entice or to bring in the financial sector to work in the forestry and the agroforestry sector, an area which is not traditional for them to be engaged. So I guess the last point is be context specific, bring in some standardization so that the transaction costs are not high, and make sure that you're thinking about what is the long-term exit strategy. That is, you don't want any of these initiatives to be dependent on some type of concessional or donor funding in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Juan Carlos. We will definitely also be liaising more on the specifics of enhancing capacities for accessing to climate for the PLACA countries in the future. So thank you for this exposition. Our last intervention this evening, and I hope we convinced you, is for Mr. Cesar Sabota, the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, Fisheries, Rural Transformation, Industry, and Labor of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who also is the president of CELAC, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States. And on this, exactly on this position as you have as president of CELAC, we would like to know from you, how do you foresee in the future a collaboration between PLACA and CELAC?
Thank you very much, and I must note, we being here, it's a show of commitment and stamina. There's a saying in my community in the Caribbean that you cannot understand where you're going if you don't know where you're coming from. And I place this in context because PLACA has done an exceptional work with all the other organizations and institutions. And when I looked at the course that you have covered and the territory that you have traversed, there are farmers in Cochabamba, in La Paz, farmers in Mexico, in different states, who continue to benefit because of not only an overall quotation from a political will standpoint, but someone was able to, from a standpoint of a multilateral platform, able to mobilize factors of production, and particularly important, to sensitize the farmers and to re-educate the farmers for this new dispensation. Over the last year, St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the rest of the CELAC member states, working in very close conjunction with the FAO, and I indeed want to commend the work that FAO has done and continues to do in ensuring that we were able to craft a food and nutrition security plan and policy. And on January the 16th, we are going to meet in Santiago, where we are going to pass the presidency, well, the plan over to Honduras, who will be the main implementing member state going forward. There is a definite need for us to synthesize and for us to collaborate, CELAC and PLACA, because for the most part, there are many member states that do the cross-section. What was very important and interesting, though, is that there is a need to do more work in the Caribbean. And whilst there is a language barrier, climate change doesn't have any barriers.
Well said.
And I must note that I am not moved in a negative way that the Caribbean is not at the forefront at this point in time, because now when you come to the Caribbean, you have tested and tried examples, and it's going to move at a very fast pace. What I would like to posit is that in 2024, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we are declaring it the year of climate proofing for the agriculture sector, the whole year of 2024. The political will is there, and there is a major activity in October of 2024, the Caribbean Week of Agriculture. And we are going to invite PLACA and CELAC and all of the mines in Latin America and the Caribbean to converge in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But we are going to launch this program very early in January. And I'm happy to have in the audience Mr. Favier Lynch, who represents the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. And the countries that we represent, all of the member states, we are going to ensure that the information that we're bringing to bear on climate proof in the agriculture sector, that it goes through all these countries, and we are definitely willing, ready, and able to continue to work with you and to lean on your shoulders. I am going to be in Santiago, and I'm going to walk with my dear brother and friend so that we can continue this conversation. But I really want to note that sometimes the persons who are working hard in the room, their faces are never seen, but your work, it continues to stand out as footprints in the sand. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, for this heartfelt words also that encourage us to continue working. COP is finishing, the year is finishing, and we have still a work plan for next year for PLACA and for more exciting things to come up based on what we have seen today. So thank you very much. I would like to take a moment to also thank my colleagues in Santiago who are watching this, Abigail, Alvarado, and Felipe Castro, who are not here today but are very strong part of the force of the PLACA Secretariat, right, Sol and right, Angelina? And so I would like to thank them for also participating on this. And I would like to thank my colleagues in FAO for being in this event. And thank you very much for your strength of hanging in there just to share what Latin America is doing in terms of climate action and agriculture. Thank you very much.